something you got to feel. While clutching to what you thought was real. Kicking at a dead horse pleases you. No way of showing your gratitude. So many things you don't want to do. What is and what have you got to lose? What the hell? What the hell? What is it you think you're gonna find? Hypocrite. Boredom's the tip to the pouring mind. Struggle with it. It's truth you find. Struggle with it. You're ruined. Struggle with it. You steal your own coffin. The struggling within.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pirate Radio. I am your host. I need no introduction whatsoever. This is going to be, we're going to fly by the seat of our pants on this episode. I hadn't really thought about this up until, I don't know, 8 o'clock-ish last night, when in one of the group chats I'm in, someone brought up, I think it was Jake, brought up the stages of a revolution. You can call it a color revolution. You can call it a counter-protest movement revolution. It's basically, we slightly got into the discussion of revolutions. Now, one of the, I don't know, I guess the historical revolution, if you will, is the people are upset with who's governing them at the time, so they then rise up, form a group, counter group, and then kick out or overthrow said government. I'm sure that's happened in the past. I'm sure that could happen again. More so what happens now with intelligence agencies and a broad range of, basically the world has gotten smaller due to technology, be that travel, plane travel versus boat travel, or the internet, or communication, digital communication versus, ticking on a thing in Morse code. Things are able to be affected from afar and on a very sped up basis, and it's kind of a flood the zone strategy. If you're not familiar with the flood the zone strategy, it's basically keep putting things out constantly that by the time the thing you're putting out about goes to question the first thing, there's 3 other things that have come out about it. And it plays on the old saying of a lie is, halfway around the world before the truth has the time to put its pants on, or whatever. It's kind of that thing. So if you keep hitting something constantly, by the time you're ready to respond to the first hit, there's 3 more hits that have come. Anyway. So, the title of the episode is Woke Insurrection and Revolution. So, based on our little brief discussion okay, so let's start with what a revolution, how revolutions happen nowadays. The CIA, FBI to a lesser extent, Mossad, MI6, whomever, basically the Western powers, if you will, have perfected, in essence, what's called statecraft. If you're familiar with Mike Benz, he really goes into this deep, and I will never, ever be on Mike Benz's level. He is definitely someone to follow on Twitter. He's definitely someone to follow constantly. If you see a podcast with him, listen to it. You're probably going to have to listen to it multiple times like I do. So he's a very intelligent guy. He's very thorough. He's very matter of fact. And anyway, that's enough about Mike Benz. He talks about this in depth. I'm just going to hit the broad strokes. So basically, if you want to create a revolution within a country, you need the people to rise up. This is if you want to overthrow the regime, if you want regime change in a country and you don't want to fire a shot, this is how you do it. This is basically what happened in Ukraine in 2016, 17, when we, as the United States, put assets on the ground and fomented a coup or an insurrection rebellion against the current regime at that time, the pro-Russian government that was in power. I forget the guy's name. Doesn't really matter. But Ukraine is a hot topic currently. Might be a peace happening there. That would be great. But so basically what you do is in any country, you're going to have some sort of like counter group to the what we would say is the legitimate government. So what you want to do is first and foremost, you want to control the narrative. So you want to control the story. So what the CIA has done in the past, this is, Operation Mockingbird is if you're not familiar with that, that's basically where they place CIA personnel in a newsroom, would be that television, print, what have you, and they kind of control the narrative, or they are really, really close to a reporter and they feed them information, sometimes false, sometimes true, but they control the narrative through that. That's kind of what Mockingbird was. So this is Mockingbird, but hopefully not on the United States. So what they do is they will go in, they will create, usually indirectly, because no one's going to, if you walk into, like, say, Tehran, Iran, and like, hi, I'm Joe from the CIA, I want to work here, they're going to be like, no. So what they'll do is they'll create NGOs, or through NGOs, they'll create what appear to be legitimate groups, or they will have a middleman who's part of the group, like, I don't know, maybe George Soros type, purchase, or through another group, they're going to purchase some sort of, or start news media. It's gotten much easier now with social media. I need to stay on topic here. Keep getting distracted by slight other things. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to create a news outlet or take over a news outlet within that country you want to overthrow. So like we did in Ukraine, you start doing things as little as pamphlets and leaflets in the streets, handing those out to people, actually creating social media accounts, both fake and real. They went so far in Cuba in, I think, 2015, they created a basically lookalike of Twitter that was only available in Cuba and tried to foment an insurrection in Cuba by using that. So that's what you're going to do. You want to control the narrative, both lies and truth, and you want to have a straight conduit to the people of that country where you can get the message out. So once you have those assets in place, that you have lines of communication, in this instance, you have mass media, legitimate lines of communication. When I say lines of communication, I don't mean like, walkie-talkies in the backwoods. I mean literally, take your phone and tweet something, or from your computer, you're going to tweet something, Facebook something, whatever it is. You're going to use assets within the news organizations. You're going to do print. You're going to do it all. You're going to hit every avenue you can. So once you do that, you're going to try to create some chaos. Now, you can do this by legitimate things or by making up stories in places where something is prone to happen based on what story you want to create. So, like, you could take, like, the south side of Chicago, by all accounts, is basically a war zone, a gang activity. If you wanted to create a story of, infant was killed or blah blah blah, like you basically, if you say a shooting happened in Chicago on the south side, not a whole lot of people care, but if now it gets to like the north side or someone else, more people are going to care. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually 100% true. I mean, you can distort this. We've seen this with our own media where they distort a story and it goes viral, it becomes the thing. And again, but what you want to do is create some sort of chaos. They tried to do this in Ukraine and create all this chaos, but it really wasn't happening, and people could see that. So there's a ratchet up effect of the chaos nature. That can be targeted killings, assassinations, getting one of another rival group, if you will, like revolutionary type group to beat up someone or what have you. You're going to try to create some chaos. But it's going to be kind of like, it's not like infrastructure chaos where the power goes out, but it's going to be chaotic, but it's going to be on a non-infrastructure level. You're going to create chaos in the streets. If you knock the power out, that's a big move, and people kind of understand, like, well, something's behind that. So you want to create some chaos, but it wants to look kind of random. In the case of Ukraine in 2016 and the Maidan Revolution, which was completely manufactured, they actually took to shooting cops, like snipers shooting cops. Snipers are a quote unquote snipers, or sharpshooters. A shot from afar is a very, very, very common thing that is used in this. So you're going to create some sort of chaos that can be killing law enforcement personnel, government personnel, some form or fashion of that, but not like actual political leaders. You might take out an assistant, you might take out like a low-level someone, but there's someone within the greater movement or greater leadership structure. Community leaders is another one. Think like Martin Luther King Jr. You take out a community leader like that, someone or political organizer, a Charlie Kirk, if you will. Clergy is another one, depending on their influence within the greater community that you're trying to affect. So once you've started to create some chaos, what you're going to do is then you're really going to prop up those counter groups. So you could say, like, you have the communist here and you have the revolutionary blah 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 over here, and you're going to prop these groups up, and those groups, by propping them up, you're going to give them funding, you're going to give them a little bit of training, you're going to give them a light press at the beginning, you're going to talk about the virtues of these two groups. Eventually you're going to pit these two groups against each other. You kind of see this in Syria, or saw this in Syria. So we're going to create these groups who are going to exercise some pressure on usually local government authority. It's never like a direct at the capital. You want to start in like political, populated centers, and they're going to create and sow some chaos within there. They're going to try to look like the good guys. These are sacrificial lambs. Just remember that. One or more or all are sacrificial lambs. So the government at that time, once you prop up these groups, if you're the legitimate government, quote unquote, you now have to do something because your power is being challenged, and there's chaos in the streets, your power is being challenged, and you have two rival groups, or a number of rival groups, that are now Good Lord. I guess we're back. Okay, so what's going to happen is, if you're the government, you're going to crack down. And everybody knows you're going to crack down. It's just, how are you going to crack down? There's one of two ways you can crack down. Number one is you want to at least arrest the leader or leadership of these rival groups. Some of them, the smart ones, this will sound dumb, but the smart governments, the true brutal ones, are going to delete these folks. They're not going to ask questions. They're just going to kill them. Okay? That's how they're just going to, the cockroach is in the kitchen. We can't make peace with it. We're going to knock it out. So that's what the smart, yes, if you're a smart leader, group, dictator, and you want to consolidate power, that's what you're going to do. But a lot of them just put them in prison. They'll imprison them. So now they look like, kind of like, even when you kill them, you have to be careful, because if you martyr them, now you got a real problem there. Martyrs are very, very, very powerful kind of propagandistic figures. But you're also going to create political prisoners out of them as well. So, again, we're just going to hit the rough parts here. So let's say you imprison them. Now, the people have to choose a side because, again, there's still chaos in the streets. Now you have these counter-revolutionaries who are obviously on the people's side. That's what they tell them, and that's where they've come from. So now the people have to choose a side. And the people will choose a side. Some will choose the government to remain the status quo, or if they benefit from the current system. But economics is a big part of this as well. If the economy is kind of in the tank, or at least going south, then it's much, much easier to prop up these other groups and have them vie for power and gain it. So I guess the question is there some sort of like AstroTurf revolution happening within the United States? If so, who's doing it? I guess the simple answer would be like, well, it's China or something like that, or it's Russia, or it's both, or it's whomever, or maybe you think it's our own guys, and that's certainly possible if we're saying this is happening. what has kind of brought this to the forefront was the tragic event that happened, I guess, 2 days ago, day before Thanksgiving, where the 2 National Guard troops were shot in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, age 20, succumbed to her injuries. The other victim, identified as Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, age 24, is in the hospital, and I guess it's kind of touch and go for that young man. They were shot by what appears to be a lone wolf attack by a former Afghan national, and I guess you could call him soldier, Raman blah 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 whatever. I don't know what his fucking name is. And the hell with him. So apparently our shooter used a .357 revolver, shot both of them. Apparently he had worked for the CIA. He was part of something called the Zero Unit, which were counterterrorism pursuit teams. Later basically got called death squads. But anyway, this fool traveled from Washington State to Washington, D.C. to carry out his horrific crime. This is a chaotic move. Is this, just one lone actual nutter? Doesn't appear to be. We don't know, but it doesn't appear to be. Is this some sort of higher, bigger play? It very well could be, because the National Guard were there in D.C. to maintain order and to regain order and stop any sort of chaos, which they were having an effect on by any sort of measurable data, and now they are, one is dead and one is clinging to life. In our nation's capital. Okay, that's a pretty overt and direct move. Now, where the woke insurrection part of this comes in is, if you take the woke agenda or the woke movement, whatever that means exactly. I mean, you can basically define woke in its simplest terms as taking a group with an immutable characteristic or characteristics, asserting that they are a moral good, and then those who do not champion that moral good issue, whatever it is, are seen as just as bad as the same as those who actively oppose the issue. I use the example a lot of the KKK. Really hated black people and Jews, but the thing they hated most were white people who liked black people and Jews, because they were looked at as the ultimate betrayers. So, we see this woke sort of mentality playing out on both sides now. Now, it was always there on both sides, but you had a lot of people, pundits, podcasters, bloggers, whatever you want to call them, that were on the right, who were playing the we're anti-woke, we're against this, we don't see color, blah, blah, blah. Which is 100% probably accurately true until their sort of like protected class became under the microscope, and then all of a sudden the exact same tactics were used on the people that they considered to be like on their side or something like that. We see this with the Israel debate, if you will, and Zionism, where it's like Israel and Zionism aren't exactly separate. Because the state of Israel is it's the result of Zionism and the Zionist movement. We're not here to debate that. But you see this when you question any sort of thing that the Israeli government does. There's the right that will tell you that you're anti-Semitic, that you hate Jews, and you don't think Israel should exist, and you're a Hamas apologist, or you're pro-Hamas, or this, that, or the other. Don't believe your lying eyes. The things you think you see, or the pictures you see, those are fake, those don't exist, what have you. Same people were saying the same thing. We're on the other side of like the trans issue, and be like, this is not true, this is not happening, or oh my God, this is horrible. And then the people were like, oh, why do you hate gay, straight, or gay and lesbian and trans people? And it's like, no one ever said anything about gay people. We were talking about the trans issue. How dare you say that this man is not a woman, even though he's 6'3", 200 pounds, swimming against females. He says he is, so therefore he is. How dare you deny him? This is a literal genocide. It's the exact same tactic getting played on both sides. Now, why does this matter? Because this is a very, very, very good thing if you are trying to foment a revolution or start a revolution inside of a country. This is an issue that will split 50-50. It is a wedge issue. There is no coming back from it. There is no middle ground on this. There's no middle ground if you're like heavy duty pro trans or heavy duty anti. Like it's the New York Yankees of issues. You either love it or you hate it. Like you're either on the side or you're not on the side. So it's like you're gonna say that, well, if someone says they're a woman, then they're a woman, and then you go, well, you're only a woman if you're like, you know, adult human female. And then like, that doesn't matter, my identity, blah, blah, blah. So if you're wanting to foment any sort of like insurrection, or if you want to just create the chaos, this is the perfect issue because it splits. It's not lost on me that this issue, this kind of woke thought mind virus, if you will, has gone both directions, in that it's happening on the right now where they've become super woke about an issue, where it was happening, still is happening on the left where they're super woke about an issue, and there's no middle ground for either of these sides, and there's no nuance, and there's no discussion, and there's nothing can happen where we try to actually solve an issue, because they see the issue as being, you're either with us or against us, and if you're against us, you're trying to murder us all. If this sounds familiar, I mean, anybody who's had any sort of like wanting to discuss the war in Gaza or wanting to discuss the issue of like transing the kids, it's the same reaction you get. It's, how dare you? You're evil. You want to kill us. How dare you? You're evil. You want to kill us. And don't believe your lying eyes whatsoever. And don't you dare discuss it. It creates the absolute like best fertile ground for not only creating division, but keeping people divided. Because then what you do is you go, oh, hey, I got to vote for this guy because he's on my side, or I got to vote for that guy because he's on my side, or vice versa, or whatever. And instead of the normal people looking at each other and going, hey, we don't hate each other, we don't hate X, Y, or Z, we don't this or that, we can be just on the same side. It prevents that. This was kind of happening prior to everyone telling you're anti-Semitic for questioning anything that happened in Gaza. Okay? Or any motivations of the Israeli government, or any motivations of anything happening in that part of the world, or just the fact that maybe we as Americans don't want to pay for all of it. Like, you go do you, just leave my checkbook out of it. So you see that same reaction on the side that then is going to be used to just split even further. So you're peeling off kind of sides of this. So it again comes back to the question of, I can't really say that there is no like sort of like revolutionary type movement happening within the United States, because there's the economic part of it, which I've talked about here previously, is playing into this, and that's how you get a like Mamdani in New York, and that's how you get a Nick Fuentes being a very, very popular podcaster or streamer, whatever his title is, on the right. The economies aren't working. People feel left out and left behind, so they're looking for anyone that's doing anything different. That becomes revolutionary type thinking. Mix that in with the normal, or the chaos that's being kind of stoked, if you will, at every turn. I mean, you can't go more than a few days, if that, without some other sort of like catastrophic, horrific kind of type thing that happens. For the left, it's the ICE raids and Trump sending the National Guard to cities to try to get them under control. And then on the right, it becomes, Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. And then the people who are like championing that, they were so happy to see that happen to that poor man. And now the National Guard people, you're seeing the same thing of people who were celebrating it. Now I understand these are some fringe retards, and I get that, but you see that happening. And then you see the media outlets, like on the left, the CNNs of the world, the Ms. NBCs of the world, now talking about guns and gun control and if this, that, or the other. And so that flames up the right, and all of us on the gun side who are like, how that's retarded thinking. How could you possibly think that? This wasn't a gun. This was a guy motivated, highly motivated to drive from Washington State to Washington, D.C. to do this. I'm not exactly sure why he had to drive across the country to do this. Feels like he could have just stayed there, kind of local. I don't know. Is the National Guard not in Portland? There's been a lot of talk about it. I don't know. I don't keep up with it that much, but maybe he really wanted to send a message. Maybe he's part of ISIS, or maybe he's part of Al-Qaeda, or maybe he's part of this, that, or the other. And then you have the Dan Crenshaws of the world who decided to get into a spat with Dave Smith on the Twitter, made himself look even dumber with his single-eyed fucking head, who wants to talk about because, we waged 20 years of war that stopped another 9/11, and it's like, well, that's spurious reasoning. I'm not really sure how you can claim that. How many 9/11s happened before 9/11? Is it 0? I mean, from 1945, let's say, to 2001, how many, Muslim terrorist attacks happened on the United States soil that resulted in the death of 3,000 people? Is it like fucking 0, or is it less than fucking 0? I mean, Dan the CIA Crenshaw is probably part of this whole thing. He's kind of a dipshit, if we're going to be honest. He went and fought combat, got blown up, lost an eye, lost buddies. Hats off to you. But that's not like some forever pass to sit there and tell us that we have to fight all of these endless wars, all of these wars all over the place, where we have to send not only troops who have to be away from their families, but we have to send men and material to fight people God knows where, doing God knows what, and for what? We just launched, there's a major battle happening in Somalia right now by special operations in the Puntland with, which if you're not familiar, Somalia is technically like two countries or two areas. You have the Horn there, that's Somalia, and then to the west is a place called the Puntland, where they're fighting remnants of ISIS and al-Shabaab forces. And it's like, I'm sorry, do these guys pose any threat to the United States whatsoever? I mean, do they honestly pose any threat? We're still in Somalia. We've been in Somalia since 2001, 2002, somewhere in there, continuously. I mean, we all saw Black Hawk Down. It didn't really go well. So Clinton leaves, and then Bush gets us right back in there, basically 8 years later, 9 years later, whatever it is. And we've been fighting in Somalia ever since. For what? What are we fighting for in Somalia? No one can answer this. So that's another part that guys like Dan Crenshaw play in this, of whether he's knowingly or unknowingly playing a part in this. He is playing a part because he's never, ever not wanted to send money to random foreign countries. He's never once said we need to get the hell out of Somalia. We need to bring all of our troops home. He's for all of these things. He's for the funding. He's for the continuing resolutions. He's for the war machine. He's for all of it. So for all of his grandstanding about, I did my time, I was out there and I spilled blood and this, that, and the other. Yeah, maybe you should come home and be like, hey, let's not do that again. I would like to have a son who doesn't have to go fight in some goddamn sand trap, lose an eye, lose his brothers, lose his friends, and then come back stateside, only to give it all up, lose trillions of dollars, and put him further into debt to which he could never escape from and possibly never buy a house from. I mean, I can get there in my head that you're just as bad as the guys who hit us on 9/11, Dan. I mean, theirs was a direct hit. Yours is more insidious of like you get to sit here and watch your country be undermined from within because, of course, every time we bomb some shithole, we have to import the shittiest people from said shithole. They didn't even have the guts to pick up a gun and fight us. They were the ones on the just standing there, either trying, probably getting shot or stealing or helping or doing whatever. And now we have to import like 8,000 Somalis to Minnesota, which I'll never understand why we had to import these people. I'll never understand why we had to import these Afghans. See, this is the other part where the right and all the pundits on the right now become complete and utter hypocrites, because when obviously critical of Joe Biden and his withdrawal from Afghanistan, you know, enough's been said about that. The man's senile. He did withdraw us from Afghanistan, but I remember at the time where they were like, we're leaving our allies behind in Afghanistan. They're going to be slaughtered by Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. What were we going to do? Bring them here, dickhead? So they can do this? This is one we brought here who just killed a National Guardsman woman. It shot another. He fought for us on our side. 9/11 happened when this asshole was 5 years old. And basically from then on, he was part of the CIA fighting on our side and literally executing people in Afghanistan for us. Another guy we trained who now uses his tactics on us in our country. Just like we trained pretty much everyone in Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan in the 80s when they were fighting the Soviets, who then used it against us to come here and blow our shit up. Great. You're doing great, Dan. I hope you're getting rich, you one-eyed asshole. Because at least maybe you get something out of it, because your character is completely gone. Your character is just the same as like a Lindsey Graham or anyone else of the warmongers who have never seen a stack of dead bodies that didn't make them smile, so long as they were wearing a different uniform. And I don't know, maybe some of them don't even care when it's wearing an American uniform. It's really hard to know, because at least in their heart of hearts, they know the check cleared from the Raytheons, from the Northrop Grummans, and so on and so forth. It just comes back to the question of, are these horrible wastes of space like your Lindsey Grahams, yeah, even your Ted Cruzes, your Dan Crenshaws, inter-warmonger here, are they just patsies? Are they just dumb? Because I don't think Ted Cruz is a dumb guy, so maybe he's just a patsy. You know, so long as we're just blowing up people in a place that I don't have to live or see, known as Gaza, where we're not going to let aid in, we're not going to let combat reporters in, we're not going to let them out, full blockade that's been on for like 20 years. So long as you don't have to see it or be there, I guess it's fine, so long as the check's clear. Right, Ted? Right, Lindsay? And why is it in these Republican strongholds that you get these guys, that they're never primaried, like really at all? Or when they are primary, they're by very unimpressive people. Are they patsies or are they part of it? Do they know the game? Because they know they're being propped up. I mean, you've got billionaires spending tens of millions of dollars to try to unseat Thomas Massie for the grave crime of wanting the Epstein files released. And they call him an anti-Semite. The same thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was castigated, run through the ringer, now is resigning from Congress, all for the grave crime of wanting the Epstein files released. And they call her an anti-Semite, and that she hates Jews, and that she hates Israel. That's funny because both Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene have never said anything about hating Jews or hating Israel. So is Epstein connected to Mossad and Israel or not? Is he connected to the powers that be within the ruling class of Israel or not? Because it sounds like with your accusations based on wanting the Epstein files released that there might be a there. That's interesting. This all comes as just more leading to a revolution happening within the United States. Is it homegrown? Is it from outside? Is it multiple groups working? Did someone take the CIA's lead? I mean, it's pretty obvious. The receipts are out there. If you're China, if you're Russia, if you're Japan, if you're Israel, if you're Iran, Iran might not have the reach some of those have. But it's the playbook is out there. It's very odd to me that pushing for the Epstein files, which, mind you, Donald Trump ran on the Epstein files. Let's not forget that. That was one of the campaign things. We're going to put Cash Patel in there, and then the Epstein files and Pam Bondi and all of this, that, and the other. And they made the whole thing of months ago where Pam Bondi stood there with those right-wing influencers and podcasters who are definitely not on the take and gave them the damn pamphlet things that were like, hey, this is the Epstein files. Now go read through them and tell them what you read, which was nothing, apparently. That's great. I don't know. Part of me thinks that Epstein is like some sort of red herring. Now, he was connected into things, but to me, he's kind of like a red herring. He's a distraction drill from something else, and I don't know what the something else is. But we have to keep coming back to this. This is kind of part of the whole woke thing, too, of like, if you're going to talk about Epstein that somehow is connected to Israel, which then means you're an anti-Semite. That sounds like some woke-ass thinking. Just like to say, if you think it's bad to give puberty blockers to a 14-year-old because they're underage and they don't know what they're doing because they think they're in the wrong body, then that means you're anti-gay people and you want to genocide trans people. And it's like, well, I don't know, man. Like, feels like there's some leaps here. But the whole thought process is the same when it comes to the whole woke bullshit. It's making these illogical leaps based on things you didn't say, but based on one thing you did say. But the one thing you did say was just you were trying to kind of like go, well, hey, hang on. What are we talking about here? Like, I don't think this is right. And it's like, genocide and Holocaust. And it's like, well, I don't know. It feels like we made a leap here. With Massey and Green and those two being run through the ringer, which, by the way, Donald Trump, when you want to post something about Thomas Massey and his wife passing away and him getting remarried like a year later, brother, I don't think you have a moral leg to stand on when it comes to relationships, okay? So just, I don't know, pump the brakes there, Mr. Stormy Daniels, and if you're going to go after him because he won't vote for your continuing resolution or your spending bill, and he's a thorn in your side, but you kind of know that's what that guy is, and like, I don't know, man. Be a little smarter than that. One, but two, the personal attacks on a guy like that make you look bad. When you call a reporter like a piggy, that's not a good look, but it is funny. But it doesn't make you look as bad as when you talk about Massey, because most of us have a very, very, very deep disdain for anyone in media, and especially as it more corporate it gets, the more disdain we have. So, Donald Trump, if you hear this, I am available to counsel you on how you should handle things in a formal setting anytime, brother. You can call or text. I'm available. That would be fucking wild. Luckily, it will never happen. But that would be fucking wild. I'll just put this out there. President Trump, if you want to come on the show anytime, I'll even come to you, man. I'll even risk it, go all the way to the hellhole known as D.C. Mar-a-Lago would be nice, but I'll go to D.C. We'll hang out, we'll do the thing. It'll be great. I'm sure the ratings will go up. If I can't get a bump out of Trump, I gotta fucking quit. But I'm not gonna quit because I'm just at home, and this is fun. This is fun, guys. Now, what the hell was I talking about? So, all of this seems to be like counter-revolution or revolutionary type rhetoric and tactics and things, because you take a guy like Massey. Well, no one's perfect. He has a very high approval rating. He's from a very small district in Kentucky. He is a very well-spoken guy. He's a very clean-cut guy. He's a very nice guy. I've never heard a bad word about him from the people who know him. I've never heard a bad word from the people who know Marjorie Taylor Greene. You don't see any sort of like negative things from her district. You don't hear any negative things from like her past, if she did this, that, or the other. Like Lauren Boebert has some baggage. I don't know if Lauren Boebert's a bad person. She doesn't appear to me to be very intelligent. Maybe just kind of average intelligence, maybe very talk pointy. I don't know. Another guy that plays into this that we haven't heard a lot from lately, mainly because he dropped out of politics, is Matt Gaetz. You remember that they tried to take Matt Gaetz out through the accusations of underage, being with an underage girl. Notice he was never tied to Epstein. And notice he was investigated by, I think, even the Judiciary Committee or something like that. He was investigated by the Congress or the House. He was investigated by DOJ. Still no charges. So, but a friend of his went to jail. Yeah, okay. Well, he was never connected to Epstein, and a bunch of people connected to Epstein. I don't know, man. There's a there. That's all I'm saying. And this whole thing feels like a house of cards. And I don't know where it goes from here as far as like the whole revolutionary talk. But the whole like, there's two talking points that piss me off because they're just they sound smart, but they're really fucking stupid. And that is, number one is the like seat at the table nonsense, or the national conversation nonsense. Like these are things that can't happen. And you sound really dumb. And when you take 5 seconds to think about when people are like, we need to have a national conversation about race. Okay, how the fuck would that actually happen? First and foremost, there's 350 million people. Like, that's nonsensical. Absolutely nonsensical. And then the other one is, and you hear this all the time from the corporate media, who then the next day or the next segment does the complete opposite. And it's like, we need to ratchet down the rhetoric. Shut the fuck up. What does that even mean? Oh, we need to come together and ratchet down the rhetoric. For what? I don't even understand what you mean by that. What rhetoric? What are you talking about? These like blanket, vague, kind of like just retarded talking points, like platitudes, are just completely nonsensical, and you just get the SEALs who are just like, yeah, we need to do that. And it's like, none of you who are clapping for that should ever be allowed to vote. You're too fucking stupid. And anyone who says we need to ratchet down the rhetoric, you're too fucking stupid to vote too. Okay? You need that privilege revoked instantly. It's just crazy to me, of like the national conversation or this, that, or the other. That's a good point, Jake. The race conversation they want is minorities lecturing white people. So long as those white people aren't Jewish, apparently. But yes, that is what they want. But that's not a conversation, as Jake, you well know, being the intelligent man that you are. That is just them telling us what we're going to do. You know, that's the other part of the revolutionary things is you're going to create a scapegoat. The government is the obvious scapegoat. Okay, now once you get everybody kind of like on the side, or at least the vast majority of like, we all dislike this government. Well, now there's going to be a scapegoating of a group. Under the Nazis, it was the Jews. Under the Bolsheviks, it was the other communists and fascists that were and saboteurs that were there. There's always a scapegoating of a group. The problem, why I called this like the woke insurrection, is Obama did prove that you can get this coalition of different grievance groups, if you will, or different minorities and different people with immutable characteristics. So, like, you can get this coalition to get elected in 2012 of gay, lesbian, black, Latino, trans, whatever it is. Like, you can cobble together this like group, but I don't know that you can cobble together that group because that group is already fractured. You know, it was less than a decade later. That group had already fractured amongst themselves. Like, can you cobble together the group on the revolution that's the minority groups together to then hold power? Because even though the like woke issues are split wedge issues, they're split wedge issues that usually deal in some sort of minority as a minority like stakeholder. Or a minority is a majority stakeholder. So, like, if you want to say, like, the current one happening on the right is Zionism, it's not even Jewish or Judaism. It's Zionism specifically. And there are many Jews out there who are not Zionists, and there are apparently a bunch of Zionists who are not Jews, which is fair enough, whatever. But you're really... at this point, the woke becomes a bad thing because you're splitting off all of these sections who can never actually come together, and they're too sectioned off to become a majority to actually like wield power. So this is what kind of tells me that it's probably not our guys doing this revolutionary type thing. They're probably on the side of the current regime and their talking points, which would make sense because that helps them consolidate power within their own structure and keeps them around. But it's also kind of amateurish, and it's the thing that you would do. Like, the playbook is out there for how to do one of these revolutions without firing a shot. But if you're, say, the Chinese and you're using social media to do all of this thing, well, you can't really get boots on the ground to do this. And then also, you don't really understand the dynamic that's happening within the country, and you don't really understand us enough to actually, like, push it. So if it's a weakening thing, it's working. Economically, you know, we're kind of tied together with China, or at least they're tied together with us. So I'm dabbling in some whiskey now since the show is getting close to being over. But I'm curious what you guys think. If you think there is some sort of like revolution being created within the United States, or at least within some major cities maybe. And if you think that, who do you think it is, and why do you think that's them? You know, I guess China's probably the easiest one to look at. But there is the possibility that it's a supposed ally of ours. And I'm not talking about Israel. You know, if you think deeper, who kind of benefits from our, not demise necessarily, but our kind of being taken down a peg, if you will? And it could be like the BRICS nations together. I don't think there's too much to coordinate there, and there's too much power to try to consolidate between them. But would it be crazy to say that, like, maybe French intelligence is behind it, trying to do something within the structure of NATO or something like that, or the greater European Union? I don't know. I really don't know. The Jasmine Crockett's and AOC's and Ilhan Omar's and Cory Booker's are tokens. Cory Booker for sure. Ilhan Omar needs to be deported. AOC is interesting. I didn't think she would have that kind of staying power. I am always slightly impressed. I don't even know if impressed is the right word, so much as surprised at her ability to stick around, be popular in her district, and always be relevant in the conversation, good and bad. I mean, she says a lot of dumb things. I guess I should quote the great Adam Carolla some months ago, where he said, if AOC was fat and 60, no one would listen to her. I think that's more of where AOC's power comes from. Comes from her chest. Jasmine Crockett. Okay. I've said this before. I'll say this again. Watch out for Jasmine Crockett. She's playing a character. She's playing it well, and she's playing it to her advantage. Okay. We shouldn't know Jasmine Crockett's name. None of us should know her name. She's a congressperson from a district that doesn't matter. If you live in Texas in that district, perhaps you should know her name. There's no reason we should know Jasmine Crockett's name. And she's playing a part right now. That's not who she is, okay? She's been to some very, very fine schools. She has been in a very nice law office, from what I understand. She is, at least on paper, is highly educated. And she has shown an ability to rise up, to make a name for herself, and to hold her own. Watch out for Jasmine Crockett. She's definitely being groomed, Jake. And that might be a good one. So B says it's the cartels, Holmes. I don't know that the cartels need us. They need us to be prosperous. They need us to be profitable. The cartels just move stuff. You know, sometimes that stuff is fentanyl, and sometimes that stuff is people, and sometimes that stuff is avocados. The cartels just know how to move shit across borders. They need us. They need us to be here. They need us to be powerful. I don't know. On the cartel thing, that gets... Okay, so the other thing that is going to weaken us, and it seems like the rhetoric has been ratcheted down a little bit, but the whole Venezuela thing. Let's call bullshit when we see bullshit, guys. I get it if you don't like drugs and you don't like drug pushers, and I get it if you don't like the commies, which I don't like the commies. Totally get it. But what are we doing in Venezuela? That's only going to make us weaker. And drugs don't really come from Venezuela, guys. Not by any measurable amount. Now, if this is some sort of like corporate thing where we're battling for oil, I don't know. Maybe we could say it. I don't know. There's no like Cassius Belli here. They're not even trying to sell this war, which is kind of a good sign, which means it's probably a lot of posturing, but it's also a bad sign of like, man, they're not even trying anymore. They're just going to go blow this fucking guy up. And by the way, I don't give a shit about Maduro. That's Venezuela's problem, man. Like, deal with it. It's the global elites like Soros and Gates. There's a power cabal of the international wealthy. Now there is, but again, like they need us to be here and to be stable. Because if America let's say, let's play this out a little bit here. I haven't really thought about this. This is where the show gets good because I indulge in some Irish whiskey. Well, proper 12 for my boy Conor McGregor. But let's play this out. If America plunges into some civil war or national divorce, what does that do internationally? So if you're like a Soros Gates, a big money guy, World Economic Forum, whatever, what does that do? I mean, you need us to make money. I mean, Microsoft, all of your investments now are like null and void. Like if we go national divorce / civil war, or if we go full blown like martial law, like true civil war. Like here's the other thing is like the United States has never actually had like a traditional bloody, like all out civil war. What we've had is we had a revolution where it was one side against another side. So it was the new colonies, the 13 colonies against the British. And then even with the Civil War, you had states that seceded and became their own country, you know, the Confederate States of America against the remaining Union states remaining Union of the United States. So you basically created two countries who then went to war with each other. Now, it was civil because it was within the same country, but it's not like Africa's Civil War where you're just slaughtering each other in the streets and you just have like rival gangs / tribes / warlords who get together and just go at each other. Okay? You know, bloody civil war for 10 years where it just at some point someone's like, man, we're tired of this shit. Where the state doesn't exist, there's no state, there's no infrastructure, there's none of that. It just goes. So if we descend into some form of that, hopefully none of it happens. But let's say, I think what's most likely is some form of like national divorce, whether that's, you know, 25 states versus 25 states and it's two countries or it's whatever that entails. Let's say we split off and become two separate countries. Jake says, number one, they get to buy up the country for pennies on the dollar. And then number two, they get to install their puppet socialist government. What are you buying up, though, if we're at war or if we like go into national divorce? I don't necessarily see exactly what they're purchasing, nor do I, you know, if you go into national divorce, then you're going to have at least two separate governments. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to install like a socialist government by just like harming us economically constantly instead of doing the whole chaos thing? I mean, you know, as everyone who's probably listening to this, and definitely the guys in the chat are going to agree with this, we have the reset button in our closets, walls, and safes. You know, if you're in the UK, you gave up your reset buttons years ago. Australia gave up some of theirs, not all of them. But we have reset buttons. So this idea, you know, I'm not saying necessarily to think you're wrong, Jake, but there's just other parts to consider where if you think you're going to like split the United States, even if it happens peacefully of like a national divorce, there's still someone you get to like vie with here. Whether it's a formal like army or if it's just a whole bunch of us fucking rednecks with reset switches strapped around us. I don't know. I you know, maybe that's why it seems so amateurish. This kind of revolutionary type tactic that's being pushed onto us, assuming that's what it is. I don't know. It's a very interesting, thought-provoking thing. that I'm going to be watching closer. Thank you, Jake, for that, by the way. I mean that seriously. Came out a little sarcastically. But yeah, I mean, I had kind of thought about it before, but then when you posed that in the group chat, it was like, well, okay. I think my boy's on to something here. You know, we have to look at these things with a skeptical eye, but also with a logical eye. To assume that we're just going to be okay because we've always been okay. This is not the normal, guys. Like, it's not normal to not have any worry of like invasion from a foreign army or horde. It's not normal to just be able to go to the store and buy any food literally any food you want. We were talking about this at one of my Thanksgiving family Thanksgiving get-togethers about I had an uncle who lived in California for a little while, and he was really close to like avocado farms and orange groves and all of those things. Did I say avocado farms? I guess orchard. Whatever. He was very close to a lot of like orchards and fruit farms and whatever. I keep saying farms, whatever. Oklahoma. But, you know, the idea that he would see just truckloads, like literal, like semi dump truckloads full of oranges going down the road or onions or whatever. And the onions was the thing I latched onto is like, you dig up these onions, they take 90 days usually to propagate. And then you dig up these onions, you put them in the back of a truck, you process them, you bag them, you ship them, and you still get a pound of them for like $2. You know how many fucking onions you got to sell at $2 a pound to make a profit? Then they came from 800 miles away or 1,000 miles, whatever the hell it is. Like, it's just absolutely crazy to think about. But not quite sure where the fuck I was going with that. But I don't know. Running out of steam. It's really what's happening here. The last thing I have here is the Russia-Ukraine deal. I'm at an hour and 5 minutes. I don't know how I got this far, to be honest with you. Oh, the skeptical eye. We got to watch things a little more closely. That is something we need to watch more closely. We need to not buy into the propaganda stuff. Some propaganda is really overt and obvious. I was saying, yeah, this is not the norm of having the land of aplenty, the safety, security, all of that. This is not the norm. This is the invention of the West. This is the American dream. Private property, guns on your walls, food in the refrigerator, food down the street, water on tap, literally, technology all over the place. I'm literally talking to like dozens of people right now and over the interwebs. Like none of this is the normal. So just remember that part. The normal is like warring tribes and people who hate you and a government that really is just there to sell the resources to the highest bidder and profit for themselves. Anyway. So the last thing I have here is the Russia-Ukraine deal. We're very early, but it appears that the actual adults are in the White House who understand that Ukraine cannot win this. They can only lose at a slower rate. So we have a deal, allegedly. Well, not a deal, but we have an offer that we're presenting, that Witkoff is going to present to Vladimir Putin himself in Moscow. That gives up Crimea, lets them keep Crimea is the actual terminology here. Lets them keep basically all of the area that they've conquered, that they've taken over militarily. And apparently we're going to have some sort of non-NATO security guarantees by us, the United States, for Ukraine. Not really happy about that one. It's probably more. There's really no way to enforce it if you're Ukraine, because that existed after they got rid of their nuclear weapons that were there. Or excuse me, after they got rid of the Soviet nuclear weapons that were stationed in Ukraine. I just want this war to end. I want us to stop writing checks to them. But also, I'm a little concerned that if it does end, that whatever checks we're writing to them are the same checks we are writing towards Afghanistan. So the Afghanistan money went right to Ukraine. It's not going to come back here. Is it going to go towards Venezuela? Is that what they're waiting on, is to free up money from Ukraine to go to Venezuela? I don't know. It would be nice if we could just stop bombing people. If we could just stop funding wars, some of which we stoke the fires of, some of which we're just involved in as a check writer. It would be nice if we stopped spending all of our treasure across the planet. That is a great point. B, for those who are listening, B, put in the comments, can we stop writing checks to the Taliban too? Funny you mentioned that. I thought that they had passed that in Congress months ago. Apparently we were lied to about that, or there was something somewhere that didn't happen. But not only did we import assholes from Afghanistan who may or may not be loyal to the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, who shoot our National Guard soldiers in the streets, but we've been paying the Taliban tens of millions of dollars for God knows what and God knows why, beyond all of the military hardware we left behind that they just inherited. Can we stop? Please. All right, here we go. So, that alone, that we're writing checks to our former enemy, or at least we were told was our enemy, or at least people who don't fucking matter to the United States, not only did we fight them, let them defeat us, give them military hardware, prop them up, now we're paying them. That is enough. That right there is enough for a revolution in this country to storm capitals all over the nation and regime change our own country. That right there is so unforgivable. So unforgivable. It is beyond words. It's beyond my vocabulary. It's beyond my heart rate at the moment. It's beyond my blood pressure of how wrong that is, that we're paying tens of millions of dollars to the Taliban right now. Right fucking now. Our tax dollars are funding the Taliban government in Afghanistan. Let that sink in. I don't know who Franklin Horton is, but I do know who Scott Horton is, and I read Scott Horton, and I feel like I'm also inheriting Scott Horton's temper when it comes to this, and I'm okay with that. That said, thank you everyone for listening. Especially thank the guys for commenting. Don't know how to leave this. I'm a little too upset, but I'll just say this. Everybody have a great night. Thank you again. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Remember what we're thankful for, even after the day of thanks. Thank you all. Good night.